Good evening, YouTubers. Dave here from Funky Sloth Comic and Collectibles. And today is Friday, March 19th, 2021. I hope everyone is staying safe and doing well. Well, with my weekly weather report that I give, today got up to about 32, 35 right in that area. Just about freezing, a little above. Sun's strong though, mountain snow, but after today, it's supposed to start climbing to be in the mid 50s, near 60. And spring is what? Just a couple more days. So we'll get rid of the rest of the snow. Before I get into tonight's video, I'll show off one of my people that I subscribe to's new t-shirt. And that would be the Bell Life. These guys are a blast. If you ever watched them, give them a shot. Their their shows are funny. I love them. Check them out, the Bell Life. So, being today is the third Friday of the month, it is time for my top 16 list. And today's top 16 list is top 16 Westerns. I love Westerns. Excuse me. I've always loved Westerns since I was a little kid. Western TV shows, Western movies, the old West actors, all of them. Always loved them. So today, it'll be my top 16 Western movies, and next in 2 weeks it'll be the top Western TV shows. So let's get started. Let's start off with my 3 honorable mentions. First honorable mention, believe it or not, is True Grit from 1969 with John Wayne, which was his only Oscar win. Love the movie, but it didn't make my top 16. Next one is She Wore a Yellow Ribbon from 1949 with John Wayne. This is a John Ford directed movie, classic. It's part of his Cavalry trilogy from him. And one thing that I always liked about this movie is She Wore a Yellow Ribbon was actually a cadence that we sang while we were in the Marine Corps for a PT during boot camp, and throughout my time in boot camp, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon was a cadence. And my third honorable mention is Hostiles from 2017 with Christian Bale, Rosamund Pike, and Wes Studi. Wes Studi is awesome. He's a really good actor. Christian Bale played great in this movie. Just great film, awesome story, and the ending was, the last half hour was intense. Intense. So, with that being said, let's get into my top 16. Number 16, Appaloosa, which was released in 2008, and it starred Ed Harris, who also directed, and Viggo Mortensen and Renee Zellweger. I think Viggo doesn't get enough credit for this role in this movie. He's played Everett Hitch, who's Ed Harris, the sheriff's deputy. The movie has some great action, and very few times in history do you actually get someone using an 8-gauge shotgun in the movies. Everett Hitch, Viggo's character, was used an 8-gauge shotgun, and they showed with great detail what happens when somebody gets shot by an 8-gauge shotgun at close range. It's a true hand cannon, and I love the movie. Great supporting actors, great story, great movie. Number 15, True Grit from 2010, which was the redo of John Wayne's classic. The reason I like this film better than the original is it's just a little grittier. They were able to do a little bit more in this movie where they couldn't do it in 1969. But True Grit from 2010 is my number 15 pick. Number 14, Silverado, which was released in 1985. And it starred Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, Kevin Costner, Brian Dennehy, rest in peace, awesome actor, and also had Jeff Goldblum in it. I enjoyed this movie from the very first time I saw it, and watch it every time it comes on TV. Every time, even if it's halfway through, I'll still finish watching it. Has good action, very good story with a good backstory, and for some reason, this movie has always struck a chord with me. Just good. Just a good Western. Even though it was made in 1985, it had that feel of an old Western. You know, the shootouts, the classic stare down in the street, everything. You know, it showed racism. It showed sexism. It did a little bit of everything, this movie, but it was really good. Really good. Number 13 is The Shootist, which was released in 1976, starring John Wayne. This was his last movie before he passed away. Rest in peace. I love John Wayne. This story is about someone facing his own immortality. And it was just beautifully shot, beautifully done, beautifully directed. It had Ron Howard, Lauren Bacall, and Jimmy Stewart. Rest in peace. Another great actor. Just how they filmed this movie, how they ended it with him actually getting killed in a shootout without him actually having to face the ultimate reality of because he had cancer in the movie. And little did anybody know that John Wayne died from cancer in real life. So it was just a great movie. Really good. Brings us to number 12, Open Range, which was released in 2003, and it starred Kevin Costner, who also directed this movie, and Robert Duvall and Annette Bening. This film, again, like I said, was released in 2003, but it felt like it was released in the 1960s. Great story. The filming locations were beautiful. The chemistry between Costner and Robert Duvall were great, as was the chemistry between Costner and Annette Bening. But it showed, the chemistry between the actors definitely showed in the movie. It was a beautifully made Western. And the great wide shots, when they come out to that final half hour of the shootout, everything was done in like a widescreen shot, which just gave you the scope of everything that was going on. Good movie. Yeah, that's a really good movie. And like I said, for a movie made in 2003, it felt like a classic Western. So that brings us to number 11. This movie is a long one. It was almost 4 hours. And for a movie that was released in 1962, a long shot. That movie was How the West Was Won, which was released in 1962. And it starred the who's who in the movies at that time. It was Henry Fonda, John Wayne, Carl Malden, Gregory Peck, Debbie Reynolds, Richard Widmark, and Spencer Tracy as the narrator. This film takes place over several decades, following a family that shows their growth, and it shows the growth of the country in those decades. It goes from, I think it was like the 1840s to the 1880s. I think that's what the time span it went through. Again, this movie, beautifully shot. You know, great action, great acting, great story, great actors. Again, How the West Was Won from 1962. Great movie. Which brings us into our top 10. My first top 10 would be Fort Apache, which was released in 1948, starring John Wayne and Henry Fonda as two Army officers who see things in totally different ways on about how to deal with the ongoing issues surrounding the Native Americans in the area. John Wayne's character was Captain York. He wants to treat them with firmness, respect. And Henry Fonda's character was Lieutenant Colonel Thursday. He's just arrogant towards them and has no respect for them. Everything is by the book, which doesn't work. This is John Ford's first installment in the Cavalry trilogy, which I already took one, which was She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. This one, and then Rio Grande. This film again is beautifully shot, great story, great acting, great supporting actors. Again, they use that wide shot, the desert scenes, the sunsets, the sunrises, just a beautiful shooting of the scenes. Yeah, I love this movie. It could have easily went higher, but some of the movies above it just that much better. But yeah, Fort Apache from 1948, number 10. Which brings us to number 9. Number 9, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was released in 1966, starring Clint Eastwood. This is the third installment of the Dollars trilogy from Sergio Leone, which included Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More, both great movies. In my opinion, this is the best of the three. This movie also starred Lee Van Cleef and Eli Wallach, who both were awesome in this movie. At least is a great spaghetti western. If people really aren't into westerns, you should really give the spaghetti westerns a try, though. They're awesome, really good. This is story. The story is great. The way the movie was shot stands out. The pace of the movie, and the way the long shots were filmed when they're at distance, and how Sergio Leone films that. Great, great, great movie. Great battle scenes from the Civil War in there. Just good. Great movie. Brings us to number 8, which is probably higher on some other people's list. Dances with Wolves, which was released in 1990, starring Kevin Costner. This is a great movie. It starts in the beginning with the Civil War, whereas Costner's character, Captain Dunbar, he pretty much does a suicide run between the two battle lines. He gets wounded, and he is offered a command anywhere he wants. And he chooses a small post as he wants to see the West before it disappears. The imageries in this film are awesome. It's a great story. The use of actual Sioux language, Sioux actors, and the story is what puts us here at number 8. Great story. How he, you know, they're both wary of each other. You know, the Sioux and him are wary of each other. They become friends, and before you know it, he is part of the Sioux Nation. Great movie. Great shooting. Just great. Oh my God, it's just a good movie. But yeah, number 8, Dances with Wolves. Let's see. That brings us to number 7. And number 7 is Magnificent Seven, which was released in 1960, starring Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, and so many others. Classic remake, classic Western take of the Japanese movie The Seventh Samurai, which is one of my favorite movies. This movie has great direction, pace, acting, and it also shows that good guys always don't make it alive in the movie. Great movie. Number 6, Rio Bravo, which aired in 1959, stars John Wayne, Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, Angie Dickinson. This movie is another John Wayne classic, tells the story of a sheriff who needs to hold a prisoner in jail until the judge arrives, but the prisoner's older brother will do anything to get him out of there. And John Wayne's character is Sheriff John Chance has to hire a former deputy back into action. It was played by Dean Martin, who's awesome in this role. And then young farm worker, Colorado, who's played by Ricky Nelson. And he's really good in the movie. And in the meantime, John Wayne's character has to find out a way to get romantically involved with Angie Dickinson's character. Who, at that time, Angie Dickinson was a good-looking lady. This movie has some pretty good action, great storytelling. The film is very fun. It's just very fun, very fluid, and it's directed by the master, who is Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks is a great director. Number 5, Jeremiah Johnson, which was released in 1972, starring Robert Redford as Jeremiah Johnson, who was a man who wanted to get away from society after the Mexican-American War. Just wanted to get away. And this movie is one of the most beautifully shot on the list. And I love the story. As who hasn't thought about leaving everything behind and going to the mountains? I think everybody's thought about at least that once. The acting, the whole feud between him and the Crow Nation, which actually ends up in respect for each other at the end. Everything about this movie puts it into my top 5. Number 4, Unforgiven, which was released in 1992, starring Clint Eastwood as Will Money, a washed-up outlaw hired gun who decides to take on one more job and teams up with Morgan Freeman, whose character is Ned Logan, and James Woolvett as the Schofield Kid, to go after cowboys who disfigured a prostitute. They were going to get paid like $1,000. Which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but back in those days, especially if you were working on a pig farm and didn't have much income coming in, $1,000 is a lot of money. They in turn run across a sheriff played by Gene Hackman, who is awesome in this role. He's awesome. Gene Hackman's a great actor, anyways. In the end, they have their little story in between. I'm not going to get into the depth stories, but Sheriff kills Morgan Freeman's character, and the Schofield kid figures he can't deal with this, and he leaves. And Clint Eastwood's character sets out to kill the sheriff and anybody that was dealt with had anything to do with the killing of his friend, and he does it in a brutal fashion. Great movie, great movie. Won a lot of Oscars. Number 310 to Yuma. This is the 2007 film. I love this film. The original from 1957 is awesome as well. But this film stars Christian Bale, Russell Crowe, and Ben Foster. Um, Bale and Crowe were fantastic in this film, but Ben Foster, in my opinion, was a standout. And he killed it as his role as Charlie Prince. But for a modern film, it definitely feels of that old classic Western from the 50s to the 70s. The visual scenes, excellent directing. The flow, the shooting of the film is perfect. Great movie. Great movie. Number 2, The Outlaw, Josie Wales, which was released in 1976, starring Clint Eastwood. It's a classic Western that starts off with the beginning of the Civil War and moves to the West after the war. Clint Eastwood is awesome in this role, as are most of the actors in the film. My one weak part of this movie, and if it wasn't for her, probably be number 1, is Sandra Locke. I never thought she was a good actress, and I don't know what Clint Eastwood saw in her, but hey. But I love how Josie Wales can absolutely be totally brutal when it calls for him to do that, but turn around to be a kind, generous man. That is what he truly is. But life turned him into that different direction, that different route. When his family was brutally murdered at the beginning of the film, you saw that he was a family man, a loving man. He saw his family killed. He becomes a badass. But he's not that in real life. He is a kind-hearted, hard-working man. But life turned him that way. So that brings us to number 1. To me, this is the best Western ever made. And that is The Searchers, which aired in 1956, starring John Wayne, Natalie Wood, Ward Bond, and so many others. It is the best Western of all time. This movie is deep. Great visuals. It deals with racism in its own way and has John Wayne at his absolute best. This movie occurs after the Civil War and has Ethan Edwards, who's John Wayne, tracking down his niece, Natalie Wood, who was abducted by Comanches. John Wayne would actually rather see his niece dead than come back after being with the Comanches. That's what he was going to do. But as near the end, he couldn't do it. It's his niece. This film is directed by one of the greatest directors, especially for Westerns in history, and that's John Ford. Again, the panoramic views, the story, the flow, the way, the angles of certain shots, the wide panorama shots, everything about this movie makes it number 1 of all time. So that's my top 16 Western movie list. Let me know what you think. I know there's a lot of other ones out there. This was a hard list for me. This took me almost 10 days to go through, figure it out. So that's the end of today's video. Sunday this week is my movie TV talk. And there's 2 big ones. That's the Justice League Snyder Cut. Holy shit. What a different movie that was from that first one that we saw in 2017. We got Falcon and Winter Soldier talk. A couple other shorter things, but the big thing is going to be the Justice League Snyder Cut. Alrighty. And then I'll see you back next Friday for my comic and collecting video. Everybody take care of yourselves. Be safe. Remember, watch what you want to watch. Enjoy it. Have a good day, guys.